At a corporate party, my wife pretended not to notice me. At that moment, I started to ask questions. You ever stand in a room packed wall to wall with people, music pulsing through the floor, glasses clinking like wind chimes, conversations swirling around like a dozen different storms, and suddenly feel like you don't even exist? That was me. Thursday night. 9:14 p.m. Back corner of the Galloway Hotel rooftop, just behind a string of fake ivy and a heat lamp that kept flickering like it couldn't make up its mind. I remember the time because I'd checked my watch for the sixth time in a row, and realized I hadn't spoken a single word to my wife in almost an hour. Her name's Madison. Mine's Ethan. And if you were watching from across the room, you'd never guess we were married. She was about 20 feet away, draped over the arm of a couch beside her boss, laughing a little too easily at some story he was telling, something about their last marketing conference in Miami, or maybe Tokyo. I couldn't tell. I wasn't part of the conversation. Never had been. Not tonight, at least. I sipped my bourbon and watched as she leaned in close to him, her hand brushing lightly against his shoulder like it was just part of the gesture. Casual. Effortless. Almost natural. What hit me hardest wasn't the touch. It was the look she gave him, the kind of bright-eyed attention she used to reserve for me, back when I was still the center of her orbit. Now, I felt like her prop. Her safe, familiar accessory. The silent husband she brought along to keep up appearances, like a purse with a handle that didn't quite match the outfit but made her feel grounded. And man, I tried. I tried to step into that world she loved so much, the one with the rooftop mixers and the agency dinners and the perfect smiles that never reached anyone's eyes. But tonight was different. Because tonight, she didn't even introduce me to a single person. Not one. I'd spent the first 10 minutes walking beside her, hand brushing hers, hoping she'd slip her fingers through mine. Instead, she peeled away the moment her boss waved her over, flashing me that over-the-shoulder smile, the one that said, "Be good. I won't be long." That was 54 minutes ago. I'd done the circuit. Got myself a drink, stood near the bar, pretended to check my email, smiled politely when someone bumped into me and muttered an apology like I was part of the decor. I even stepped onto the balcony for a bit, thinking maybe she'd come find me. Just for a second. Just to say, "Hey, you okay?" She didn't. Instead, she laughed again, louder this time, and her boss leaned in close to whisper something that made her press a hand to her chest, fake gasping like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. That sound. That laugh that used to belong to me. I don't know why, but I checked my wedding band. Just this automatic thing, thumb to ring finger, little spin. Still there. Still gold. Still meaningless. You ever have one of those moments where your whole body is in a room, but your soul's already halfway out the door? That's what it felt like. Like I was fading, inch by inch, right out of her life. And the worst part? She didn't even seem to notice. I caught one of the interns glancing at me from across the buffet line. Some kid in a checkered blazer and sneakers that probably cost more than my car payment. He gave me this polite nod, the kind you give someone when you're not exactly sure who they are. I nodded back, but I knew the truth already. No one here knew I was Madison's husband. Because she hadn't told them. And that realization, that quiet, creeping truth, it settled in my gut like a block of ice. I downed the last of my drink and set the glass on a nearby table, barely hearing the soft clink as it hit the surface. My jaw tightened. Shoulders stiff. I kept my gaze locked on her, watching as she smiled and nodded and glowed like she belonged here more than she ever did with me. And for the first time since we walked into this party, I started to wonder if maybe that was true. If maybe I was the stranger. Not to the people in the room, but to the woman I married. I gave it another try. Waited until her boss drifted off toward the bar, until there was finally a sliver of space beside her on that sleek velvet couch she looked too comfortable in. I crossed the room slowly, rehearsing what I might say, something light, something easy. Maybe just, "Hey, you look incredible tonight." That wasn't a lie. She did. She always did. Madison had that kind of beauty that didn't need adjusting. She could walk into a room with her hair still damp from the shower and turn heads. But when she was polished like this, red lips, eyes lined sharp, in that black dress that hugged her like it remembered every inch of her, she didn't just turn heads. She held them. And mine had been hers from the very beginning. So I walked up, hands loose at my sides, heart thudding like a rookie about to take the stage. Just as I opened my mouth, she turned slightly, angled herself away, and lifted her phone to her ear like it had just buzzed, which it hadn't. I paused, awkward now, hovering in her peripheral. Waiting. She didn't look at me. Didn't motion me to sit. Didn't say my name. Just waved her hand without glancing up and mouthed, "Just a sec." I took the hint. Backed away. That was the third time. I tried earlier too, once when she and a few colleagues were gathered around the open fire pit, and again at the hors d'oeuvres table when she was talking to that blonde from HR. Both times, she brushed me off with the same gentle, practiced excuse, I'm in the middle of something important. Important. Right. I ended up near a tall cocktail table by the railing. My bourbon was gone, but I nursed the ice cubes like they were worth something. The city stretched out beneath us in perfect little lights. Cars moved like slow sparks down the grid. Somewhere across the skyline, someone else's life was probably falling into place. Mine. It was slowly unraveling. That's when I noticed something. A woman I didn't recognize, a guest maybe, or someone from the client side, tilted her head toward Madison and asked the guy next to her, "Who's she here with?" He shrugged. And that was it. Not a single person around us said my name. No one gestured toward me. Not even a glance. It was like I didn't exist. Like I was someone's plus one who'd wandered off and never got claimed. I scanned the room again, this time from a different lens. Madison wasn't wearing her ring. I knew because I looked, twice. She'd slipped it off, probably hours ago. Maybe before she even left the house. And still, I hadn't said a word about it. That's the worst kind of loneliness, you know. Not being alone. But standing right next to someone you love, and feeling like you're miles away. I leaned against the metal railing, the cold biting through my shirt. Pulled my phone from my pocket. No new messages. No missed calls. I opened our text thread, just to see it. Just to remind myself that there was a time when she'd message me during moments like this. Quick notes like, "Save me from this convo," or "You look hot. Let's go soon." But tonight, nothing. Just a blinking cursor at the bottom of an empty bubble. I scrolled back a bit, found the last message she'd sent me. "Can you pick up toothpaste on your way home? No, I love you. No, I miss you." Not even a stupid emoji. Just toothpaste. I don't know what hurt more, that the silence between us had gotten so normal, or that I was the only one who noticed. I slipped outside. No one noticed. No one stopped me, asked if I was okay, or even nodded like they'd seen me around. Madison didn't look up. She was laughing again, shoulder tilted toward her boss like she hadn't just waved me away 15 minutes ago. The rooftop opened into a small garden terrace. Kind of a spillover space for guests who needed a breather. Potted lavender along the edge, string lights hanging overhead. It was quieter out there. Softer. Like the party was a memory I'd just stepped away from. I found a bench near the back and sat down, letting the cold sink into my legs. I didn't mind the chill. It felt honest. Everything inside me felt like static, like a low hum of confusion and something that maybe, just maybe, was starting to resemble grief. I pulled out my phone again. Not to text her. I wasn't sure what I'd even say. Instead, I opened my gallery and let my thumb scroll. Photo after photo. There we were, me and Madison, faces pressed close together, cheeks sunburned in Asheville, wind blown on the ferry to Bainbridge, half asleep in a diner at 2 a.m. because neither of us could wait until morning to try the pie she'd read about in some blog. There was a picture from our anniversary last year. She had one of those little sparklers in her cocktail, laughing with her whole body, looking right at me like I was still the only person in the room. I remembered how she reached across the table and said, "You still make me nervous sometimes." God, that hit me then. Because I hadn't made her nervous in a long time. Hadn't surprised her. Or challenged her. Or lit her up in that specific way she used to say no one else ever had. I zoomed in on one photo, just our hands, her fingers laced in mine, a shot I must have taken without thinking. The ring was there. The light hit it just right. Her thumb was gently pressing against my skin. I remembered how, when we first started dating, she used to trace little circles on the back of my hand during movies. Said it helped her concentrate. Said my skin felt like calm. Now, she hadn't touched me all night. And here I was, sitting alone in a rooftop garden at her company party, scrolling through ghosts. I knew what some people would say. That I should go back in there, make a scene, pull her aside and ask what the hell's going on. But I wasn't that guy. I never have been. I don't raise my voice. I don't point fingers. I just sit with the ache. It's not pride. It's not weakness either. It's knowing that sometimes, the most deafening betrayal isn't a lie or an affair or a slammed door. It's indifference. It's the way someone can erase you, not in one clean break, but in small, subtle gestures. One ignored text. One missed glance. One too long conversation with someone who isn't you. I didn't cry. Not out there in the cold. But I stared at that photo of our hands for longer than I cared to admit. Memorized the lines, the placement, the closeness. And I wondered, quietly, painfully, how something that real could become this invisible. I must have been sitting out there for 20 minutes, maybe longer. The night had that kind of weight to it where time didn't move normally. The cold wrapped around me like a coat I never asked for. I didn't shiver, didn't pace. I just sat there, staring out across the city, trying to feel something other than what I already knew. She wasn't coming to find me. Madison always used to know where I was. I mean really know. She could read my silences better than most people read words. There were nights early in our marriage when I'd retreat into myself, bottle something up, and she'd just appear. Sit beside me, not saying a thing, but somehow making it better just by being there. Tonight, I'd walked out of that party and vanished into the dark, and she didn't even blink. I checked my phone again, out of habit more than hope. And there it was. 9:52 p.m. Please come back. I need you here. Just that. 9 words. No emoji. No punctuation, except for the period at the end, like she meant for it to land hard. My stomach clenched in that weird, involuntary way. Not pain, not fear, just the familiar mixture of confusion and something close to guilt. Like maybe I'd missed something. Like maybe I was the one being unreasonable. I stared at the message longer than I should have. It didn't match the night. Not the way she'd looked through me. Not the way she'd laughed like I was air. Not the way she'd worn that ringless finger like a badge. What changed? Was it the optics? Someone asking where her husband was? Or had she finally noticed the shape of the absence I left behind? I stood up, slowly, letting the blood return to my legs. Slipped the phone back in my coat pocket. I didn't reply. Not right away. Not because I was punishing her, but because I didn't know how to answer a message that felt more like a question. What did she mean, I need you here? Need me to drive her home? To stand next to her so no one whispered? Or, crazy as it sounded, did she mean she actually wanted me there? Because those weren't the same thing. Not even close. I walked toward the elevator, the soft thump of the bass from the rooftop fading behind me. As I passed the glass doors leading back into the party, I paused. I could see her from across the room. Still smiling. Still talking. Still untouched by the fact that I had left. That's what stopped me from going back in. I turned instead. Rode the elevator down with 2 strangers who smelled like aftershave and designer soap. One of them was talking about crypto. The other was nodding like he understood. They didn't even notice me. Once I hit the ground floor, I stepped out into the chilled air and didn't look back. Walked the short block to where I'd parked and climbed in. The car was dark. Quiet. My little pocket of control. I sat with my hands on the wheel. Let the engine idle. The dashboard glowed faint blue, illuminating nothing but my own reflection in the windshield. I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't know where I wanted to go. But I knew I wasn't ready to walk back into that party and pretend her message changed everything. So I put the car in drive. Rolled slowly down the street, no destination in mind. Just moving. Just breathing. Just trying to sort through the noise in my chest. And then, halfway down the block, my phone buzzed again. I pulled into a quiet side street and parked. The screen lit up in my hand. 9:59 p.m. I panicked. Just please come back for 5 minutes. I'll explain. This time, something shifted. The first text had been a command. This one was a crack in the armor. 5 minutes. Not forever. Not even an hour. Just enough time to see if this thing we'd let unravel could still be rewoven. And for the first time all night, I didn't feel invisible. I pulled over near a corner cafe. One of those little places that somehow always looked closed, even when it wasn't. The kind with foggy windows, flickering neon in the front, and a single guy behind the counter who never seemed surprised by anything. I didn't go in. Just sat in the car, the soft hiss of the engine slowly dying as I turned the key and let silence take its place. 5 minutes. That's what she said. Just please come back for 5 minutes. I'll explain. You know how sometimes, when someone says, I'll explain, it sounds more like a plea than a promise. That's how it hit me. Not like she had a plan, or a truth she'd been dying to share. More like she didn't know what to do with the mess she'd made, and was hoping I'd help her sort through the pieces. I leaned back in my seat, both hands behind my head, just staring at the ceiling, letting the quiet hold me, letting my thoughts run wild until they calmed themselves. What did she mean? What was she going to say if I walked back in? Was this some kind of last-ditch gesture because someone noticed I wasn't around and asked an inconvenient question? Or was it real? I didn't know anymore. Because the truth is, I wasn't just mad. I was tired. Tired of being the one who always showed up. Who always kept his cool. Who held space for the chaos and swallowed his own. Tired of holding together a marriage with one hand while the other was brushing dust off the parts she kept dropping. And yet, I hadn't driven home. I could have. Easily. Could have shut it all down and left her to navigate the rest of the night alone, just like she'd left me alone in a room full of people who didn't even know I existed. But I didn't. Because some part of me still wanted to understand. Still needed to hear it from her lips, even if the words were hard. Even if the explanation left new bruises I didn't know I could carry. I tapped my fingers on the steering wheel and looked out at the glow of the cafe sign, the soft red neon bleeding into the sidewalk like watercolor. A couple walked past, hands clasped, laughing about something only they could hear. That used to be us. We used to have that private language, the kind of shorthand only people in love develop over time. A glance, a half smile, a sentence that didn't need finishing. Now, we were back to full paragraphs. Carefully worded. Punctuated with silence. I picked up my phone. Opened our messages again. Her bubble still sat there on the screen, blue and glowing. I panicked. Just please come back for 5 minutes. I'll explain. There was no follow-up. She hadn't double-texted. Hadn't tried to call. It was like she was holding her breath too. Waiting. Hoping. Or maybe just wondering if this was the night everything cracked open for good. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. Eyes tired. Collar slightly wrinkled. I didn't look like someone attending a party. I looked like someone surviving one. And maybe that was the whole point. Marriage isn't supposed to feel like survival. Not this kind. Not this quiet war where love hides behind polite nods and party etiquette. So I sat there a minute longer. Then another. Then, finally, I reached for the key. My hand hovered there. Because before I turned it, I needed to make a decision. Was I going back because she needed me? Or because I still needed her? The thing about silence is, it can stretch. Widen. Get inside your ribs. And that's exactly what it was doing, right there in the parked car on the edge of downtown, the air cooling rapidly, the engine long dead. I hadn't moved. Not really. Just sat there, caught somewhere between her message and my indecision. I must have reread it a dozen times. 5 minutes. That's all she asked for. But 5 minutes of what? Honesty? Regret? Damage control? I didn't know. And I was so deep in my thoughts that I didn't even hear the buzz, just felt the faint vibration in the center console. Another text. I didn't reach for it immediately. I waited a few seconds like I was afraid it would vanish if I moved too fast. Eventually, I picked it up. 10:11 p.m. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have ignored you. I panicked. There's more to all this than you think. I didn't know how to say it. That one hit different. Because that was Madison breaking her pattern. My wife wasn't the apologizing type, not because she was cold, but because she was calculated. Careful. Measured. If she crossed a line, it was usually because she'd decided the outcome was worth it. But this didn't sound calculated. It sounded real. I read the text again, slower this time, letting it settle. I panicked. 3 words. And suddenly, the edge I'd been balancing on didn't feel so sharp anymore. It felt familiar. Like the woman I'd fallen in love with had just resurfaced for a breath after being underwater for far too long. I remembered the first time she used those same words. She'd just moved in with me. We were unpacking boxes and arguing over where to put the bookshelf. She'd snapped at me for something small, ridiculously small, and I remember her turning away, ashamed. I panicked, she'd said back then, quiet and shaky. I've never had this before. Something that felt stable. I don't know how to trust it yet. And now here she was again, years later, a different version of the same woman, still not knowing how to handle something real. Still struggling to trust something that should have felt safe. I leaned my head back against the seat. Exhaled slow. I wasn't off the hook. Not even close. There were questions I needed answered. Words I needed to say that I'd been holding in for way too long. And still, none of that mattered if she was just texting me out of guilt. But that last message. It didn't smell like guilt. It smelled like fear. Like someone finally realizing they might have pushed a little too far, and were reaching back through the dark, hoping the hand they once held was still there. So I made my choice. Turned the key. The engine kicked back to life, the sound oddly steady for how my chest felt. I pulled out of the narrow side street and headed back toward the Galloway, the city lights spilling across the windshield, soft and strange and somehow lonelier than before. I wasn't sure what she was going to say. But I knew this much, when someone who doesn't beg finally does, you listen. And when someone who always holds the power finally says, I panicked. You go see what broke inside them. I didn't text her back. Didn't say, on my way or okay or anything that might have given her time to prepare. I think that was the point. I wanted her raw. Off balance. Without the benefit of rehearsing whatever she thought I needed to hear. The valet out front barely glanced at me as I parked across the street and walked back toward the Galloway. The doorman nodded politely, probably assuming I'd just stepped out for a call or a cigarette. Everyone in that lobby moved too fast, like they were late to something. Except me. I took the elevator up alone. Same one we'd ridden together earlier that evening. Her hand in mine back then, fingers curled just slightly, like she was halfway in. Halfway out. The doors opened to the rooftop, and the sound hit me all at once, music, laughter, the distant clink of glass against glass. Same scene, same people, but something in me had shifted. And apparently, something in her had too. Because the second I stepped inside, Madison spotted me. And everything about her changed. She'd been standing near the bar, sipping something that looked like champagne. Alone now. No boss, no colleagues, no audience. She locked eyes with me immediately, didn't flinch, didn't smile. Just moved. Quickly. Like she'd been holding her breath since I left. She didn't ask where I went. Didn't scold me for leaving. She just walked straight up, grabbed my hand, and whispered, "Come with me." I let her lead. She pulled me down a hallway tucked behind the bar, past a staff-only sign and into a narrow passage that probably led to service elevators and back-of-house kitchens. The walls were plain, off-white, humming faintly with the buzz of electrical units. The overhead light flickered once as we turned the corner. She stopped when she was sure we were alone. Just the two of us. No polished voices. No curated image. Only the quiet. And the wait. She didn't speak right away. Didn't let go of my hand either. Her grip had tightened. Like maybe she thought I'd disappear if she loosened even a little. I waited. Not because I was being patient, but because I wanted her to go first. This was her fire to walk through. Finally, she inhaled, shaky, like it hurt a little, and said, I didn't know how to explain it without sounding like a mess. I didn't answer. Not yet. She looked up at me, eyes glassy but clear, and continued, something happened tonight. Earlier. Before you even noticed I was off. Off was putting it gently. Gavin, my boss, he said something. Did something. I handled it. I shut it down. But I had to pretend it didn't happen. Because, she trailed off, her jaw tightening. Because if I made a scene or called him out in front of everyone, it would have been my word against his. And I knew exactly how that would go. I felt my back straighten. She wasn't crying. But she was close. I didn't interrupt. Didn't push. She kept going. I froze. And I didn't want to bring you into it because I wasn't sure if you'd understand. Or if you'd look at me different. That last part stung. Because even in the middle of her own storm, she'd believed I might be part of the wreckage. She finally let go of my hand then. Stepped back slightly, like she needed the space to be honest. I was trying to look in control. Like I had it handled. I didn't mean to push you away. I didn't know how to be okay and protect you at the same time. Her voice cracked just a little. And I didn't want you to see me small. There it was. The truth behind everything. Not flirtation. Not pride. Not a desire to hurt me. Just fear. Fear that if I saw the cracks, I'd stop seeing her the way I always had, strong, unshakable, 10 steps ahead. But the irony. That strength she'd been trying to protect, I'd never needed it. All I ever needed was her. She folded her arms then, like she was cold, but I knew better. That wasn't about temperature. That was protection. A reflex. The kind you build when you've spent the evening smiling through something you never wanted to deal with. I leaned against the wall across from her, my hands in my pockets, not distant, just trying not to crowd her. I wanted her to speak freely, not because I demanded it, but because she needed to. The hallway buzzed faintly, that cheap fluorescent kind of quiet. You could still hear the party behind us, muted now, like it was happening on another planet. She looked down at her heels, then up at me. He touched my back, she said, voice low but steady. That's how it started. Just a hand, casual, but it lingered. She blinked hard, then looked away. Then came the compliments. You know the kind. Wrapped in business speak but laced with something else underneath. I did know. I'd seen that look before. On her. On other women. That flash of calculation, figuring out in real time how to deflect something without detonating it. I laughed it off, she went on, like I always do when I feel cornered. Like I've been trained to do. I even thanked him when he handed me the drink he insisted I try. Because that's what you do when you want to keep your job and not become the difficult one. Her voice cracked slightly, just enough to let the edge in. And then he said it. Right there, while everyone was distracted. He leaned in and said, "Your husband's not really in your league, is he?" I felt something flare in my chest. Not anger, exactly. That would have been too easy. It was a cold kind of burn. A hollow tightening behind my ribs. Not because I cared what Gavin thought of me, but because she had to stand there and pretend like it hadn't gutted her. He smiled when he said it, she added quietly, like it was a compliment. Like I was supposed to agree. I ran a hand down my face and took a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "And you didn't tell me because..." She looked up then, and something in her eyes just broke open. "Because if I told you, you'd walk over there and put him through a wall." I didn't deny it. She gave a sad smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "And if that happened, I'd be the woman who brought drama into the workplace. Who made things messy. Not him. Me." I hated that she was right. She had every reason to tell me, and every reason not to. So I played the part, she continued. I acted like it was fine. Like I didn't feel sick to my stomach. I stayed in that circle, and I kept laughing, and I kept avoiding you, because I couldn't hold it all together and look at you at the same time. That landed hard. She wiped at the corner of her eye with the back of her wrist, fast. Like she was embarrassed by the softness. "I knew if I let you near me, I'd fall apart. And I didn't want to unravel at a party full of people who've already decided who I am." The hallway was quiet again. And I swear, for a second, I saw her exactly as she was. Not the polished version she wore in front of clients. Not the distant silhouette I'd watched from across the rooftop. But Madison. My wife. Exhausted. Cornered. Still holding 1,000 pieces of herself together with nothing but willpower and breath. I stepped toward her, slow, deliberate. Reached for her hand again. She didn't resist. Didn't flinch. Her fingers curled into mine like they remembered the shape they were supposed to be. And she whispered something I almost didn't catch. "I needed you." And I didn't know how to say it without looking weak. I squeezed her hand once. Just once. "Needing me doesn't make you weak." She closed her eyes then, like the truth of that had finally caught up with her. And for the first time all night, she let herself lean. We stood like that for a while, back pressed against a wall that probably hadn't been painted in years, her forehead resting near my collarbone, our hands still joined like a tether neither of us wanted to cut. And for the first time since this night began, I wasn't watching her from a distance. I was with her. Inside the storm she'd been trying to outrun in heels and lipstick. She didn't speak for a bit, and I didn't push. But eventually, the question slipped out. Not sharp, not accusing. Just soft. Honest. "Why didn't you just tell me?" She didn't lift her head. But I felt her fingers twitch against mine, a tiny movement, like the answer itself stung. "Because you always look at me like I'm unshakable," she murmured. And tonight, I wasn't. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how wrong she had it. "Madison," I said, quietly. "You think I've stayed married to you this long because you never fall apart?" She looked up at that, eyes red-rimmed but focused now. "Listening. I don't love you because you hold it together all the time," I said. "I love you because sometimes, you don't. Because sometimes you break and let me be the one who carries it for a while." She swallowed hard. "I forgot how to do that," she whispered. "No," I said gently. "You just stopped thinking you were allowed to." Her chin dropped a little, guilt flickering across her face like a film reel she couldn't stop playing. "I've been so busy trying to prove I belong at that table," she said. "With them. With him. I thought if I showed the slightest crack, it'd all fall apart. So you pushed me out." She nodded, eyes glossing over again. "And you were right to be mad," she said. "You should have been. I made you invisible tonight. And that wasn't fair. I hate how easy it's gotten to shut down the people I love just so I can survive the ones I don't." That one cut deep. Because I'd felt it. That slow fade, not just tonight, but over the last few months. Her phone calls getting shorter. Her tone sharper. Her affection measured, like a resource she had to ration. I'd told myself it was the job. The stress. The promotion she was chasing like a moving finish line. But hearing her say it now, it felt like someone finally turning on a light in a room I'd been bumping around in for too long. "I wanted to protect you from all of this," she said. "But I think what I really did was protect the version of myself I thought you needed." I stepped back just slightly so I could see her face better. My voice stayed quiet, but steady. "You don't have to perform with me. Not ever. I don't care how many people in that room think you're brilliant. I just want to be the one person you don't have to impress." She blinked, and a single tear slipped down her cheek. Not dramatic. Not messy. Just honest. She didn't speak again. Didn't need to. She just reached out and pulled me close, head against my chest, arms around my waist, and stayed there. Like maybe if she held tight enough, the rest of the night would slip away and we could start again from here. No crowd. No mask. Just the quiet thud of my heartbeat against her ear. We didn't say anything for a long time. But we didn't need to. Because sometimes, forgiveness doesn't come as a speech or a vow, it comes in silence. In proximity. In the way two people finally stop fighting each other and start holding what's left. We didn't head back to the rooftop. We didn't return to the party, or her half-finished glass of champagne, or the crowd that barely noticed we were gone. We just stood in that narrow hallway for a few moments longer, until the weight of the night loosened its grip just enough for her to breathe again. Then, quietly, she reached for my hand. No words. No, let's go. Just a gentle pull. We passed the servers in black ties and the event staff refilling trays like nothing was unraveling behind those double doors. The music had picked up, louder now, someone shouting about tequila near the bar. But we didn't stop. We moved like shadows, sliding through the noise without touching it, without letting it touch us. The elevator doors closed behind us, sealing off the night above like a vault. Neither of us spoke on the ride down. Her thumb brushed over mine once, absently. I could feel her pulse in it, fast but steady. A rhythm she was trying to bring back under control. When we stepped out onto the street, the cold air wrapped around us, not like a punishment this time, but like permission. Permission to be done. Permission to leave something behind. We crossed to the car in silence. I unlocked it, opened her door, and for a brief second, she just stood there, looking at me. Then she leaned in and kissed my cheek. Not romantic. Not seductive. Just soft. Thankful. Like this, walking out with me, was her first honest act of the night. Back home, the lights were low. Just the amber glow from a hallway lamp we always forgot to turn off. She kicked off her heels in the entryway, letting them clatter to the tile like the armor they were. I shrugged off my coat and hung it on the hook, suddenly aware of how still the house was. The kind of quiet that isn't empty, just full of things waiting to be said. She sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on her knees, her necklace tangled slightly from the night. I sat across from her in the armchair. A few feet away, but close enough to feel it. That invisible line between pain and peace. Are we okay? She asked, not looking up. The question hung there. And for the first time all night, I didn't rush to answer. Because that wasn't a yes or no kind of thing. I don't know, I said honestly. But we're talking. And that's more than we were doing a week ago. She nodded slowly, eyes on the floor. You scared me, she said quietly. When you left. You scared me, I replied, when I realized no one at that party knew I existed. She winced, but she didn't deny it. I didn't do it to hurt you, she said. I just forgot how to make space for us while trying to hold everything else together. That was it, really. Not betrayal. Not hatred. Just a slow drift. A slow forgetting of how we started. Of what we meant. I'm not your anchor, I said softly. I can't be the thing you tie yourself to only when the water gets rough. Her eyes finally met mine. And there was so much in them. Not just guilt. Or exhaustion. But fear. Real, honest fear. I thought if I admitted how tired I am, how lost I feel at work, you'd think I couldn't handle it. That I wasn't enough. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Madison. I've never wanted perfect. I've wanted you. Just you. Honest. Flawed. Fighting to keep us close, even when it's messy. Tears welled quietly in her eyes, but she didn't blink them away. She let them stay. I've been so afraid of losing control, she whispered. And I've been afraid of losing you. There it was. The truth, bare and fragile between us. We'd both been afraid. Just, of different things. She reached for my hand again, this time, not as an apology or a peace offering. Just as someone trying to hold onto something that still mattered. And I let her. Because whatever came next, we'd speak it aloud. Not bury it under silence. Not hide it behind smiles. Not pretend it didn't matter until one of us finally walked away for good. And maybe, just maybe, that's how love survives. Not in the perfect nights, but in the hard ones. The quiet ones. The nights where two people sit facing each other, finally admitting what they've been too scared to say for far too long.